December wind howls through the bare trees of a medieval German village. The year is 1437, and something terrible rides the winter storm. Above the thatched roofs, hunters hear it first. The sound of horns echoing not from the forest floor, but from the churning clouds above. Then comes the baying of hounds, impossibly loud and growing closer. The villagers bolt their doors and pray to saints they hope are listening. Through gaps in the shutters, those brave enough to look see them. Ghostly riders galloping across the sky, their horses' hooves striking sparks from storm clouds. At their head rides a figure cloaked in shadow and crowned with antlers. Behind him surge the dead, warriors and hunters from ages past, their eyes burning with otherworldly fire. This is the wild hunt, and those who see it rarely live to tell the tale. From Scandinavia's frozen wastes to the black forest of Germany, from Britain's misty moors to the alpine peaks of Switzerland, for over 2,000 years, Europeans have whispered of this terrifying phenomenon. A ghostly procession that tears across winter skies, led by gods or demons, collecting souls or foretelling doom. Medieval chroniclers recorded it in trembling Latin. Monks inscribed warnings in the margins of holy books. Peasants passed down protective charms from grandmother to granddaughter. Kings consulted their wisest advisors when the hunt appeared before battles. But what exactly is the wild hunt? Is it merely ancient superstition born from the terror of winter storms? Or does this persistent myth, spanning countless cultures and centuries, point to something deeper in the human psyche? Tonight, we ride with the ghostly host through the dark forests of European folklore. We'll trace this legend from its pagan origins, when gods led the hunt, to its Christian transformation into a parade of the damned. We'll discover why this myth appears in nearly every European culture, each with its own terrifying variations. The hunt begins now, and once you hear the horns, it may already be too late. If you're ready to look beyond the veil of forgotten myths and uncover the secrets the world chose to forget, subscribe to Inside Strange Times, so you won't miss new journeys into the realm of ancient mysteries. Long before Christianity cast its shadow across Europe, our ancestors already knew the wild hunt. The roots of this terrifying phenomenon stretch back to the Bronze Age, when Indo-European tribes first spread across the continent. Archaeological evidence from burial sites dating to 3000 BCE reveals a consistent pattern. Warriors buried with their horses and hunting dogs. Chieftains entombed with entire retinues as if preparing for an eternal hunt. The Andronovo culture of the Central Asian steppes practiced ritual horse sacrifice specifically during winter solstice ceremonies. These ancient peoples believed that death was not an ending, but a transformation. The dead didn't simply vanish. They joined an eternal hunt in the sky realm. This wasn't a peaceful afterlife of harps and clouds. It was dynamic and dangerous, a continuation of earthly pursuits magnified to cosmic proportions. The linguist Georges Dumézil traced the word elements across Indo-European languages. The Proto-Indo-European rootweed, meaning to see or to know, connects to words for hunting and pursuit. The same root gives us the Germanic Wotan, the Celtic Gwydion, and the Vedic Veda. All these terms link knowledge, death, and the hunt in a primal linguistic web. In 1928, excavations at Sutton Hoo in England uncovered a ship burial. The Anglo-Saxon king lay surrounded by weapons and treasures. But most telling were the horse bones and the remnants of hunting gear. The positioning suggested not mere grave goods, but equipment for an otherworldly journey. Similar discoveries across Europe paint a consistent picture. The Hochdorf chieftain's grave in Germany, dated to 530 BCE, contained a bronze couch decorated with warriors riding across the sky on wheels. The wheels themselves, 8 spoked like many solar symbols, suggest celestial movement. In Pazyryk burials of Siberia, preserved by permafrost for 2,000 years, we find tattooed warriors with their horses. The tattoos depict fantastical beasts, hybrid creatures that exist between worlds. These weren't just decorative. They were spiritual passports for the journey after death. The most striking evidence comes from rock carvings scattered across Scandinavia. At Tanum in Sweden, Bronze Age petroglyphs show processions of warriors, some clearly alive, and others skeletal riding together in long lines. Above them fly ravens and eagles, the carrion birds that bridge life and death. The Celts possessed perhaps the most elaborate mythology of the wild hunt before the Germanic traditions overshadowed them. In Irish mythology, the Slua were spirits of the restless dead. They flew in great hosts from the west, the direction of the dead in Celtic cosmology. The Book of Leinster, compiled in the 12th century, describes the hosting of the city. These fairy folk weren't cute sprites, but the transformed dead, riding out from their hollow hills. They hunted on specific nights, Samhain and Beltane, when the veil between worlds grew thin. Welsh tradition speaks of Gwyn ap Nudd, Lord of Annwn, the otherworld. He leads the Cone Andon, the hounds of Andon whose barking grows quieter as they approach. The medieval Welsh tale, Culth and Olwen, describes Gwyn gathering the souls of warriors every day until doomsday. The Mabinogion preserves an even older tradition. Aran, king of the otherworld, exchanges places with a mortal prince. During his year in the mortal realm, Aran hunts with white hounds with red ears. These colors, white and red, consistently mark otherworldly beings across Celtic mythology. In Brittany, the Anko rides a creaking cart collecting souls like a grim harvest. Though later Christianized as a skeleton, early accounts describe him as the last person to die each year, who must serve as death's huntsman until the next takes his place. Scottish Gaelic tradition tells of the Slua Sidhe, the fairy host of the unforgiven dead. They fly in great clouds from the west, seeking dying souls to snatch away. Highland families would close west-facing windows when someone lay dying to prevent the Slua from claiming them. The wild hunt served a crucial function in pagan cosmology. It wasn't random or chaotic, but a necessary mechanism for conducting souls to the afterlife. The hunt leader acted as psychopomp, a guide between worlds. This role appears across Indo-European cultures. Hermes in Greek mythology leads souls to the underworld. The Valkyries of Norse tradition choose the slain and guide them to Valhalla. The Hindu god Yama rides a buffalo and judges the dead. All share the common thread of movement and transition, often depicted as a hunt or harvest. The hunt metaphor wasn't arbitrary. Death came suddenly in ancient times like an arrow from the forest. Disease struck like wolves in winter. The psychopomp needed to be swift, powerful, and inexorable, qualities embodied in the hunt. Roman writers documented similar beliefs among Germanic tribes. Tacitus, in his Germania, written in 98 CE, describes nocturnal processions honoring a goddess he calls Nerthus. During these rituals, all iron was put away and peace was enforced. Those who glimpsed the goddess's face were immediately drowned in sacred lakes, joining her eternal retinue. The wild hunt's connection to winter runs deeper than mere seasonality. Ancient Europeans understood winter as the death of the natural world. The sun reached its weakest point at winter solstice. The boundary between life and death grew dangerously thin. This liminal period lasted from Samhain to Imbolc in Celtic reckoning, or from November to February. The German term Rauhnächte, the rough nights, specifically marks 12 nights from Christmas to Epiphany. During this time, the wild hunt rode most frequently. Archaeological evidence supports this seasonal focus. Ritual deposits in bogs and lakes dating from the Iron Age cluster around winter months. These offerings, weapons, horses, and occasionally humans, seem designed to appease or join the spectral hunters. The Roman writer Procopius, writing in the 6th century, describes a fascinating tradition from the coast of Gaul. Fishermen there claim to ferry invisible souls to Britain on the darkest winter nights. Their boats would sink low under unseen weight, and voices would call out names of the recently deceased. While focusing on European traditions, we must acknowledge parallel beliefs that illuminate the universal nature of this archetype. The Mongolian wind horse carries souls across the sky. Japanese folklore speaks of the Hayaki Yagyo, the night parade of 100 demons. These parallels suggest the wild hunt addresses fundamental human anxieties: the fear of death, the mystery of what comes after, and the terror of forces beyond control. Every culture that experienced harsh winters developed similar myths of spectral hosts claiming souls. The Slavic peoples had their own version called Dikaya Okota, led by the god Veles, master of the underworld. This hunt gathered souls during the depths of winter. Russian folklore preserves stories of entire wedding parties swept up by the hunt and transformed into eternal revelers. No figure dominates the wild hunt mythology as completely as Odin. The Norse All-Father, god of war, wisdom, and death, embodies every aspect of the spectral hunt leader. His many names reveal his nature. Grimnir, the Hooded One, Gangleri the Wanderer, Draugadraten, Lord of the Undead. But most telling is Vildi, the Wild Hunter, directly connecting him to the wild hunt tradition. The 13th century prose Edda, compiled by Snorri Sturluson, provides our most complete picture. Odin rides the 8-legged horse Sleipnir across sky and earth and into hell itself. This supernatural steed, born from Loki's shape-shifting liaison, represents transcendence of normal boundaries. 8 legs suggest the 8 directions of the compass, or perhaps the legs of pallbearers carrying the dead. The Ynglinga saga describes Odin's nature explicitly. At Yule, he visits his people blessing or cursing them. He could appear as warrior or wanderer, beautiful or terrible, depending on his purpose. Most significantly, he could project his spirit while his body lay as if dead, traveling instantly anywhere in any form he chose. The Poetic Edda, older than Snorri's prose work, preserves ancient traditions in cryptic verse. The poem Grimnismal describes Odin's hall Valhalla, where chosen warriors feast until Ragnarok. But these einherjar don't simply wait. Each day they battle, and each night they ride out with Odin on mysterious errands. The Helgakvitha Hundingsbana 2 contains a striking passage. The Valkyrie Sigrun encounters her dead husband Helgi, riding with a ghostly host. He tells her he must return before the cock crows or face eternal wandering. This temporal restriction appears consistently in wild hunt narratives. The Harbarsel Joth presents Thor meeting a ferryman who is Odin in disguise. Odin boasts of seducing women and leading warriors astray. He claims the nobly born who die in battle, while Thor gets mere thralls. This selectivity in death marks Odin as chooser of the slain, the ultimate hunter of souls. Archaeological finds support these textual sources. Picture stones from Gotland, dating from the 5th to 11th centuries, show 8-legged horses bearing riders to a great hall. Above them, fly ravens, Odin's companions Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. The Changvid stone specifically depicts a rider on an 8-legged horse welcomed by a woman with a drinking horn, likely a Valkyrie receiving the dead. Sleipnir deserves special examination as more than just Odin's mount. This 8-legged gray horse represents a shamanic tradition older than the Viking Age. The Voluspa describes Sleipnir's creation. When the gods needed to complete Asgard's walls, they struck a bargain with a giant builder. Loki transformed into a mare to distract the builder's stallion. The resulting offspring was Sleipnir, a horse that could travel between all 9 worlds. 8 legs appear in shamanic traditions across Siberia and Central Asia. The extra legs represent the shaman's ability to journey between worlds. Drums used in Sami shamanism often depict reindeer or horses with extra legs for spirit travel. Medieval Icelandic sources describe gandride, or spirit riding. Practitioners would send their spirits out, often appearing as animals while their bodies remained comatose. The church condemned this practice, but folklore preserved it. The connection to Odin's spirit journeys seems unmistakable. The horse as psychopomp appears across Indo-European cultures. Greek mythology has Pegasus. Celtic tradition has the water horses that carry souls to the other world. The Vedic Ashvins, divine horse twins, and rescue souls from death. Sleipnir represents the ultimate evolution of this archetypal death steed. The einherjar, Odin's chosen warriors, form the core of his hunting party. These aren't peaceful spirits, but eternal fighters maintaining their warrior nature beyond death. According to the Gylfaginning, 540 doors lead into Valhalla. Through each door, 800 warriors can march abreast. This gives us 432,000 warriors, a cosmic army. They feast on the boar Sehrimnir, which resurrects each day, and drink mead from the goat Heidrun. But the einherjar don't simply feast. The Vafthrudnismal states they fight each other daily on Odin's courtyard. The slain rise again to feast in the evening. This eternal combat maintains their battle readiness for Ragnarok. Medieval sagas preserve traditions of encountering the einherjar. The saga of Hakon the Good describes the king's death and journey to Valhalla. Valkyries lead him to join earlier kings in Odin's eternal warband. The poet emphasizes how the einherjar ride out from Valhalla at night, still pursuing earthly conflicts. The Norwegian Dromkvedet, a visionary ballad from the late medieval period, describes Odin's host in Christian times. Though filtered through Christianity, the poem preserves older elements. The dreamer sees the Galler Bridge to the afterlife and armies of the dead riding through the sky. Norwegian tradition calls the wild hunt Askeria or Oenskjæren. The name combines Odin's name with riding or hunting. Folk beliefs recorded in the 19th century preserve ancient details. The Askeria rides during Yule season, particularly on Lucinata, December 13th. Witnesses describe a thunderous cavalcade with black horses and riders. At the front rides a large man on a white horse, unmistakably Odin. Norwegian farmers would leave out beer and porridge for the Askeria. This hospitality ensured protection rather than punishment. Those who forgot might find their beer barrels empty or their horses exhausted from being ridden all night. In Sweden, the phenomenon was called Odin's jakt or Vilda jakten. Swedish folklore collected by Gunnar Olof Hiltain Cavalius preserves hundreds of accounts. Witnesses consistently describe hearing horns and hounds before seeing the riders. The Swedish version often included Skogsrået, the forest spirit being pursued by Odin. This adds an element of actual hunting beyond mere soul gathering. Some tales claim Odin hunts the Skogsrå because she rejected him, adding personal drama to cosmic events. Danish tradition preserves unique elements. King Valdemar's hunt merges historical figures with mythological patterns. King Valdemar IV, who died in 1375, supposedly loved hunting more than salvation. As punishment, he leads an eternal hunt across Zealand's skies. The Danish folklorist Evald Tang Christensen collected accounts in the 1800s of the Asgardsrea. Witnesses described a procession of spirits, including unbaptized children and women who died in childbirth. This Christianized version maintains the core concept of restless spirits traveling en masse. Icelandic tradition uniquely preserves the feminine aspect of the wild hunt. The Yule lad's mother, Grilla, rides out seeking naughty children. Though sanitized in modern times, older accounts describe her leading a host of spirits during the 13 days of Yule. The wild hunt fundamentally connects to Norse eschatology. The einherjar don't simply hunt, they prepare for cosmic war. Every soul gathered strengthens Odin's army for the final battle. The Voluspa describes Ragnarok's approach. Brothers will fight brothers. The wolf will swallow the sun. The earth will sink into the sea. But before these physical catastrophes come spiritual signs. The dead will walk. The hunt will ride openly, no longer confined to winter nights. The connection runs deeper than mere preparation. The wild hunt represents a crack in cosmic order. Each time it rides, the boundary weakens between life and death. Eventually, that boundary will shatter completely. Snorri writes that, before Ragnarok, there will be 3 winters with no summer between. This Fimble winter represents the wild hunt's ultimate victory when winter and death consume everything. The Vafthrudnismal adds crucial details. After Ragnarok, the field Eithavoll will remain. There, the surviving gods will find golden gaming pieces from before the destruction. This cyclical element suggests the wild hunt, too, will begin again in the reborn world. Physical evidence supports the literary accounts of Odin's wild hunt. Archaeology reveals a widespread cult focused on war and death. The Vendel period helmets from 6th century Sweden show fascinating details. Pressed metal plates depict warriors transforming into wolves. Above them ride spear-wielding figures on 8-legged horses. These probably represent berserkers joining Odin's hunt. Bracteates gold medallions from the migration period consistently show a large head above a horse. The head often has one eye emphasized, suggesting Odin. Birds frequently accompany the central figure, likely his ravens. Weapon deposits in bogs, particularly from Denmark, reveal ritual destruction. Thousands of weapons, bent and broken deliberately, were offered to war gods. The Illerup Odal deposit from 200 CE contained an entire army's equipment ritually destroyed. The Oseberg ship burial from 834 CE contained tapestries depicting processions. Though interpretations vary, many scholars see representations of the wild hunt. Riders in unusual garments accompany a wheeled vehicle, possibly carrying a deity. Rune stones provide textual evidence. The Tjengvid stone from Gotland, mentioned earlier, explicitly shows the eight-legged horse. The Lærbro Store Hamars stone depicts a similar scene with Valkyries offering mead to arriving warriors. Place names preserve the cult's extent. Hundreds of Scandinavian locations incorporate Odin's names. Odense in Denmark means Odin's sanctuary. Onsala in Sweden derives from Odin's hall. These sacred sites likely hosted rituals invoking the wild hunt. As Christianity spread northward, Odin's nature shifted. No longer the Allfather, he became a demon or the devil himself. But his essential role as hunt leader proved impossible to erase. Medieval Icelandic sagas, written by Christians, preserve pre-Christian traditions. They couldn't celebrate Odin, but couldn't forget him either. The result is complex. Nuanced portrayals of a god become demon. The saga of Olaf Tryggvason describes the king meeting an old one-eyed man. The stranger tells wonderful stories about ancient kings and heroes. Only later does Olaf realize he entertained Odin himself and orders prayers to prevent his return. The church attempted systematic replacement. Saint Michael took over Odin's role as psychopomp. Saint Olaf became the new eternal king. But folklore maintained the older traditions, barely disguised. Norwegian church records from the 17th century complain about peasants leaving out porridge for the Oscaria. Despite centuries of Christianity, the wild hunt still rode, and people still paid tribute. Beyond Scandinavia's borders, the wild hunt took darker forms. In German lands, it became Das Wütende Heer, the furious host. Here, the emphasis shifted from Odin's noble warriors to a chaotic mass of damned souls. The name itself reveals the transformation. Wütend means furious or raging, suggesting uncontrolled violence. This wasn't Odin's organized warband, but a mob of spirits driven by rage and desperation. Jacob Grimm, in his Deutsche Mythology, compiled in 1835, documented hundreds of regional variants. In Westphalia, the hunt was called the Wild's Heer. In Bavaria, it became Die Wild Jagd. In Swabia, people spoke of Wotan's Heer, preserving Wotan's ancient name. Medieval German chronicles provide remarkable eyewitness accounts. The Zimmerische Chronik from the 16th century describes Count Eberhard encountering the furious host near Würzburg. The count heard horns and horses, saw dark shapes against the sky and fled to a chapel where he stayed until dawn. The Paderborn Chronicle of 1424 records a mass sighting. Citizens reported seeing an army in the clouds with banners and weapons. The chronicle notes that 20 people died within days of the sighting. The church ordered 3 days of prayer and fasting to avert further disaster. In the Black Forest region, the hunt had specific routes. Local tradition mapped the Gespensterwege, the ghost roads. These paths through the forest were avoided after dark, especially during the 12 nights of Yule. The German hunt often included specific named leaders. Hackelberg the Wild Huntsman appears in Lower Saxony. He was supposedly Hans von Hackelberg, a Brunswick master of the hunt who blasphemed God, wishing to hunt forever. His wish was granted as eternal damnation. The Pied Piper of Hamelin connects to wild hunt traditions. The historical event in 1284, when Hamelin's children vanished, spawned various explanations. One interpretation sees the piper as hunt leader, claiming souls through music rather than force. In Britain, the wild hunt acquired distinctly Arthurian features. The once and future king didn't die, but transformed into an eternal hunter. The earliest reference appears in the Peterborough Chronicle from 1127. Monks reported seeing black hunters with black horses and hounds hunting in the very park of the town. They connected this to the appointment of an unpopular abbot. Welsh tradition preserved older Celtic elements. Arthur led the Cwaun Andan, the hounds of the other world. The Red Book of Hergest, from the 14th century, describes Arthur hunting the giant boar Tuirch Treath across earth and sky. In Cornwall, Arthur's hunt has specific locations. Cadsonbury Hill supposedly holds Arthur's sleeping nights. On winter nights, they ride out their horses' hooves, striking sparks from granite. The Vita Merlini by Geoffrey of Monmouth, written around 1150, adds mystical elements. Arthur doesn't simply hunt, he pursues cosmic prey. The text describes a celestial boar representing chaos that Arthur must catch to restore order. English folklore collected in the 19th century preserves local variations. In Somerset, Arthur's hunting causeway marks his supernatural route. Devon traditions claim Arthur hunts on Dartmoor, pursuing demon hounds called wish hounds. The Anglo-Saxon chronicle entries from the 12th century describe multiple sightings. In 1154, hunters were seen from Stamford to Peterborough. The chronicler notes reliable men witnessed this, including several clergy. Medieval romance literature transformed Arthur's hunt. In Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the supernatural hunt tests knightly virtue. The hunt becomes metaphor for spiritual pursuit, not mere soul gathering. Herne the Hunter represents a unique English evolution of the wild hunt leader. First mentioned in Shakespeare's Merry Wives of Windsor, Herne has deeper roots. The legend places Herne in Windsor Forest as a former keeper who saved the king from a stag. Wounded in the rescue, Hearn was healed by tying the stag's antlers to his head. Later hanged for poaching, or by suicide, he haunts the forest still. Windsor forest records from the 14th century mention a spirit called Horn or Hearn. Royal hunting logs note areas avoided after dark due to supernatural activity. The Hearn Oak in Windsor Great Park stood until 1863. Local tradition claimed Hearn appeared there before national disasters. Queen Victoria herself reportedly saw Hearn shortly before Prince Albert's death. English forest law created perfect conditions for wild hunt beliefs. Harsh punishments for poaching meant many died in forests. Their spirits supposedly joined eternal hunts, pursuing or fleeing supernatural game. The Penzance area preserves the Devil's Dandy Dogs tradition. These headless hounds hunt across moors, led by the devil, or Dando, a priest who preferred hunting to services. Medieval court records document legal implications. In 1398, a Derbyshire man claimed the wild hunt destroyed his crops. The court accepted supernatural destruction as grounds for tax relief. France developed elaborate wild hunt traditions, blending Celtic and Germanic elements. The Mesne Heliquin, or Heliquin's household, represents the Norman tradition. The name Heliquin possibly derives from the Old English Herlaking, or Germanic Helakönig, meaning Hell King. This figure appears in the 12th century ecclesiastical history by Ordericus Vitalis. Ordericus describes a priest named Walchelin encountering the Heliquin family on New Year's Eve in 1091. The procession included knights, ladies, and clergy, all suffering torments for earthly sins. Walchelin recognized recently deceased neighbors among the damned. The chasse galerie, or flying canoe, represents French-Canadian evolution. Lumberjacks would sell their souls to fly home for New Year's Eve. If they cursed or touched a cross, the canoe would crash, damning all aboard. In Brittany, the Anko leads a different hunt. This personification of death drives a cart collecting souls. The cart's squeaking warns of approaching death. Unlike other hunts, the Ankou works alone, a solitary psychopomp. Medieval French romances incorporated wild hunt elements. The Chanson de Roland mentions armies in the sky before great battles. The Roman de Renart includes talking animals fleeing supernatural hunters. The Grand Veneur of Fontainebleau haunts the royal forest. First reported in 1598 before Henri IV's assassination, this black huntsman appears before royal deaths. Louis XV reportedly encountered him shortly before dying of smallpox. Slavic traditions developed unique wild hunt characteristics. The Dikaya Okota, or wild hunt, blended with local beliefs about spirits and demons. Polish folklore speaks of the Dziki Gon, led by the devil or mythical King Papiel. This hunt specifically targets the wicked, unlike Western versions that take anyone encountered. The Czech wild hunt, Divocký Han, includes unique elements. The hunter, Svojanovsky, leads hounds that are transformed sinners, those who mock the hunt join the pack as dogs themselves. Russian traditions preserve the Dikaya Okoda, led by various figures. Sometimes it's Veles, the ancient cattle god. Other times, a cursed lord who hunted on Sundays. The hunt coincides with blizzards and storms, natural phenomena personified as spirits. The Chronicle of Novgorod from the 13th century describes supernatural armies fighting in the sky. These appearances preceded Mongol invasions, linking the hunt to historical catastrophe. Serbian epic poetry mentions the Divilja Jaga. Prince Marko supposedly leads dead heroes across mountain peaks. They hunt Turkish ghosts, an eternal continuation of earthly conflicts. Hungarian folklore describes the Vadashat, led by King Matthias. This righteous hunt pursues evil spirits protecting the living. Unlike Western hunts, it's seen positively as supernatural justice. Southern European traditions show unique adaptations of the wild hunt myth. The warmer climate changed seasonal associations, but core elements remained. In Spain, the Santa Compañía, or Holy Company, represents Galician tradition. This procession of souls walks rather than rides, carrying candles. The living person forced to lead them wastes away unless replaced. Portuguese folklore speaks of the Procissão das Almas, the procession of souls. These spirits seek prayers and masses to escape purgatory. Unlike northern hunts, they inspire pity, not terror. Italian traditions vary by region. In Tuscany, the Caccia Morta, or dead hunt, rides during storms. The Lombard Cacciatore Nero, Black Hunter, pursues specific victims marked for death. The Benandanti of Friuli represent a unique tradition. These good walkers fought evil spirits in dream battles. 4 times yearly, their spirits left bodies to ensure good harvests. The Inquisition struggled to understand this tradition, eventually condemning it as witchcraft. Greek folklore preserves the Kali Kanseroi, chaos spirits active during winter. While not strictly a wild hunt, they represent similar liminal dangers. Christianity's spread across Europe required confronting deeply rooted pagan beliefs. The wild hunt proved particularly resistant to elimination. Instead of erasing it, the Church transformed it into a Christian morality tale. The process began with reinterpretation. Pagan gods became demons. Neutral psychopomps became agents of damnation. The hunt shifted from cosmic necessity to divine punishment. Pope Gregory I's letter to Mellitus in 601 outlined the strategy. Rather than destroy pagan sacred sites, consecrate them. Rather than ban traditional festivals, Christianize them. This policy applied to beliefs as well as places. The Corrector Sive Medicus by Burchard of Worms, from around 1008, lists penances for pagan practices. It specifically mentions belief in the Night Riders, whom some call the Furious Army. The prescribed penance was 1 year on bread and water. The Canon Episcopi from the 9th century addresses similar beliefs. It condemns women who claim to ride with Diana at night. The text calls such beliefs demonic delusions. Yet, by condemning them, it confirms their persistence. Medieval sermon collections reveal the Church's struggle. Priests were instructed to preach against the wild hunt. Yet they also used it as warning about damnation's reality. The Decretum of Gratian, compiled around 1140, consolidated church law. It specifically forbids believing in or participating with the nocturnal hunt. The penalty increased to 3 years' penance, showing growing concern. The transformation of Odin into Satan himself represents Christianity's most dramatic revision. The All-Father of Norse paganism became the father of lies. Medieval texts show this evolution clearly. The Old Norwegian homily book from around 1200 calls Odin the devil's messenger. By 1300, texts simply equate Odin with Satan. Physical descriptions merged. Odin's wide-brimmed hat became the devil's hood. His spear transformed into Satan's pitchfork. His wolves and ravens became hellhounds and demon birds. The Gesta Danorum by Saxo Grammaticus from around 1200 shows this process. Saxo presents Odin not as God, but as historical wizard who deceived people through dark magic. German folk tales, collected in the 19th century, preserve transitional forms. The eternal hunter, sometimes called Wad, is clearly Odin, but he's also explicitly diabolic, complete with horns and sulphurous smell. The Swedish Historia de Gentibus Septentrionalibus by Olaus Magnus from 1555 describes the transformation. He writes that pagans worshipped demons, thinking them gods. The wild hunt proves Satan's power over the deluded. Medieval chroniclers provided detailed accounts of wild hunt encounters. These weren't folklore, but official records, often by clergy. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records multiple sightings. The entry for 1127 describes hunters seen by many, including monks. The Chronicle treats this as historical fact, not superstition. Gervase of Tilbury's Otia Imperialia from 1211 dedicates chapters to the wild hunt. He describes the Herlican family as fact, citing witnesses. The Chronicle of Lanercost from Scotland records an encounter in 1345. Knights saw a great hunt pursuing a white hart. The Chronicle notes several witnesses died within days. Walter Map's De Nugis Curialium from 1182 contains extensive wild hunt material. He describes King Herla condemned to ride until Judgment Day. Map claims personal knowledge of sighting locations. The Nuremberg Chronicle of 1493 includes woodcuts of the wild hunt. The text describes armies in the sky as divine warnings about coming disasters. Vincent of Beauvais, in his Speculum Historiale from 1250, catalogues hunt appearances. He correlates sightings with plagues, wars, and natural disasters. The hunt becomes God's warning system. Christianity created a new wild hunt leader, the cursed hunter. This mortal sinner replaced pagan gods, making the myth a moral lesson. The basic pattern repeats across Europe. A nobleman loves hunting more than God. He hunts on Sundays or holy days. He declares preference for eternal hunting over heaven. God grants this blasphemous wish as punishment. Count Eberhard of Württemberg appears in German versions. He supposedly said, "Hunting beats paradise." Now he hunts eternally pursued by hellhounds. The French Comte Reynaud hunted on Good Friday. When warned by monks, he set his dogs on them. Divine justice transformed him into prey, eternally fleeing his own hounds. Hans von Hackelberg, mentioned earlier, represents the German type. Historical records confirm a real huntmaster of that name. Legend claims he wanted to hunt until Judgment Day. His wish came true as damnation. The English wild Darrell of Littlecote House killed a priest during a hunt. His ghost leads phantom hounds across Wiltshire. These stories served multiple purposes. They preserved wild hunt traditions in Christian form. They warned against Sabbath breaking. They demonstrated divine justice. The late medieval period linked the wild hunt to witchcraft. This connection would prove deadly during witch trials. The Malleus Maleficarum from 1487 describes night riding. Witches supposedly joined the hunt or led their own spectral processions. Trial records preserve forced confessions. In 1586, Rebecca Lemp of Nordlingen confessed to riding with the furious host. She was burned as a witch. The Pendle witch trials of 1612 in England mention spectral hunts. Accused witches allegedly transformed into animals, joining night processions. Jean Bodin's De la démonomanie des sorciers from 1580 explicitly connects witches to the hunt. He claims Satan leads witches in aerial processions, mimicking divine power. The connection worked both directions. Believing in the hunt suggested heresy. Claiming to see it implied witchcraft. Either could lead to execution. Swedish witch trials of 1668 to 76, called the Great Noise, involved hunt beliefs. Children testified about night rides to Blåkulla, Satan's mountain. 300 people were executed. Despite demonization, the wild hunt served Christian purposes. It became proof of supernatural reality in an age of growing skepticism. Scholastic theologians debated its nature. Thomas Aquinas suggested demons could move physical matter, creating aerial displays. This explained hunt sightings within Orthodox theology. The hunt reinforced social hierarchy. Noble hunters who abused privilege faced eternal punishment. This warned against tyranny while supporting legitimate authority. Monastic chronicles used hunt appearances as chronological markers. Like eclipses or comets, hunt sightings dated events. This gave the myth historical legitimacy. The hunt justified Christian practices. Prayer protected against encounters. Church bells drove it away. Consecrated ground offered sanctuary. These beliefs reinforced church authority. Medieval art incorporated hunt imagery. Church frescoes showed demons hunting souls. Manuscript illuminations depict aerial processions of the damned. The hunt became visual theology. The dance of death tradition parallels the hunt. Both show death's democracy, claiming all ranks. Both remind viewers of mortality's certainty. The hunt simply adds motion to death's dance. Purgatory doctrine absorbed hunt beliefs. Souls in purgatory might join the hunt temporarily. Prayers and masses could free them. This created economic incentive for church donations. By the Reformation, the wild hunt was thoroughly Christianized. Protestant reformers attacked it as Catholic superstition. Catholics defended it as warning against heresy. The ancient myth became theological battlefield. The wild hunt refuses to die. Through 2 millennia of religious change, it has adapted and survived. From Odin's noble einherjar to Satan's damned souls, the core remains unchanged. A spectral host rides through winter skies, claiming those who cross its path. This persistence reveals something fundamental about human psychology. We need myths that acknowledge death's power while suggesting continuity beyond the grave. The wild hunt provides both terror and strange comfort. Death comes for all, but existence continues, even if transformed. The myth addresses timeless anxieties. What happens to our essence after death? Are we judged by our actions? Do the dead influence the living? These questions transcend any single religious framework. Modern encounters continue, though interpreted differently. UFO sightings, black helicopters, mysterious lights, echo ancient patterns. We still see inexplicable things in the sky. We still feel pursued by forces beyond comprehension. The hunt survives in cultural memory through brief modern appearances. Fantasy literature and horror films reference it occasionally. But its true persistence lies deeper in the archetypal fears it represents. What does it mean that every European culture independently developed this same basic myth? Perhaps it reflects universal human experiences with death and winter, storm and darkness. Or perhaps, as our ancestors believed, some truths transcend mere symbolism. The next time winter wind howls through bare branches, the next time you hear sounds in the storm that shouldn't be there, remember the wild hunt. Remember that for centuries, your ancestors knew to bar their doors and wait for dawn. Some knowledge shouldn't be forgotten. Some warnings echo across ages for good reason. The wild hunt rides still, in the liminal spaces between belief and skepticism, between past and present, between the living and the dead. And somewhere in the depths of winter, when the veil grows thin, perhaps it rides in truth as well,